Those are your words, mate, not mine.
I am in misery. No, yeah, I'm in a state of misery, state of Missouri. Well, it's funny because if you live in, there's three ways you can say it. There's Missouri, there's misery, and there's Missouri. So depending on what you say, you can determine what part of Missouri you're from.
Well, listen, I really can't comment about misery because I've never been there. But those are your words. Just reminding everyone. That was my education on misery.
Yeah, there you go. But anyways, we are live. Right now we got, like I said earlier, we got the better half of the Haynes brothers. Ant is currently coaching right now, so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But right now,
Ant's not being here on time has screwed up my whole intro.
Ant's head is going to pop up here in probably the next 5 to 7 seconds. So when you see it, and he's going to be panicking and sprinting in the office, but his mic is ready to rock and roll.
Oh, that's awesome.
And his seat is ready to go. I can normally tell by his footsteps, so when it's him, because he clambers up really heavily.
Oh, is he heavy-footed?
Hey, there's a top knot. Do you see that?
Oh, there it is. I did. See, Brian, top knot. See, in Asia, it's called a top knot, not a man bun.
Are you talking to me? Where are you looking?
Yeah. Oh, you. Well, wait. You're right. I gotta switch screens here. Sorry.
Yeah, top knot man bun. I'm not really sure what it is. I mean,
I call it top knot. I call it top knot because man bun has like a negative connotation to certain people. So,
man, I mean, I would say that a top knot has more of a negative connotation with me than a man bun.
Really? Why is that?
I think there was there was a phase where everyone was growing the top knot and then shaving the sides. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But we just had a friend who's also a coach in the team who had one of those, and he just happened to be the kind of punching bag of the group at the time. And so I just think with all the stick that we gave him, maybe it's burned a memory in my head that top knots are not as cool a thing. Anyhow, guys, here's the other half.
Man buns are really cool before you say anything.
There we go. See, he's a man bun guy.
He calls it man bun. Oh, no.
What are you having a discussion between man buns and top knots?
Yep. We definitely are.
I'm not really giving any resistance. Patrick just is trying to educate me on the ways of the world.
Brian's like, this was not on the agenda for today's call at all, but here we are.
That's the great thing about this show is like there really isn't an agenda. No, there is.
Just haircuts. That's it.
Yeah. You said that's like really douchey. Before you go, Brian, before you start, I want to pull this up and just be like, show Ed how insulted I am by his comments. He's like, what I say?
Suspense. I have no idea.
I'm like,
I know exactly. Yeah, let's pull it up here. 1 second.
Is it your hair?
This is when I was
supposed to be looking at.
Yeah, this is when I was trying to. This is when I was trying to. My attempt.
Oh no! I'm sorry, Paddy.
Yeah,
sorry.
This is it right here. Look at that.
Oh no! I'm sorry.
It was a baby. It was a baby one. It was so small.
It's more of a back knot, to be honest.
Yeah.
No.
It wasn't
Don't try and save yourself. You said top knots are not good.
You did.
You
did.
Paddy is rocking the top knot there. So
yeah, I'm climbing out the hole right now.
I was just starting to grow it. So
you were one of the unique ones that looked great, and because you have a fantastic personality and you're a great human, it doesn't matter about your hair.
Yeah, whatever.
How's
Okay,
that?
wait. I'll give you that one. All right,
Thank
Brian.
you.
You said that you had an intro.
Oh, I was just thinking about, we do these shows and sometimes the guest is pretty obvious and sometimes it depends on how plugged in you are. And in the case of Ant Haynes, I think many people will have at the very least seen what he did at the CrossFit Games this year. But they may not know that he's been, from what I can tell, the fittest or maybe one of the 2 or 3 fittest men in Hong Kong since 2016. Is that fair, Ant?
Yeah, I'd say so.
And I couldn't really find anything that would be even remotely close to say about Ed Haynes.
That is true. Very true.
But I did do a little bit of digging here, and he was third best in Hong Kong in 2017, and he was top 1,000 in the world in the Open in 2019.
Ooh.
So no shortage of fitness. Also has aged into the Masters category last season and placed top 300 in the world for the very competitive men 35 to 39. So he knows a thing or two about fitness as well. And if not having the same success on the field of play, both of these guys have had a lot of experience with coaching. And I think we're going to learn a lot about growing some of the CrossFit community in the part of the world that they live in, which is a part of the world that many of us have rarely been to or never been to.
I mean, I'll just start with the introduction you gave me, Brian. I mean, no one's really pulled up my CrossFit stats, I think, ever on an interview. So like that was actually a bit of a learning curve for me. Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I mean, Ant, have you got anything to add on to your intro?
No, I guess, yeah, I think I've been doing this for a while now. Yeah, for sure. I guess, in this realm, you're kind of judged upon the semifinals, regionals, super regionals back in the day, or of course the CrossFit Games appearances and how you do at the CrossFit Games. But I think both of us have been around in this sport now for 10 odd years. Patty, I've known you for ages now, and we've seen each other in multiple competitions, and Brian more recently so. But yeah, it's been awesome to grow through this sport, and I guess what we're going to get onto today is like growth within here, within this part of the world, and where it's going. It's been amazing to be a part of it.
Yeah, I mean, we can. I think we'll cover a bunch of different topics, but we can start with that, I suppose. There's, it's quite difficult to gauge necessarily like participation in the CrossFit season historically. But in the last 2 years, they have had more easy, and a few years in the past, I think 2019 probably has this, but have had the ability to sort by country. And I just pulled up something. I mean, first of all, you guys have been in Hong Kong for a long time, right?
Yeah, we were both born here. Grew up here, went to school here, went to university in the UK, and then came back here and established Coastal Fitness and been here ever since.
Actually, the year that you had your best Open was the one year you were living in the UK, and it lists you as the 35th best man in the UK that year.
Ooh.
Yeah, so that was it was actually funny. So that was before. No, that's right. Well, because I hold a British passport, both of us do. Ant had actually got his Hong Kong passport, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Years before that, when we were playing rugby, there was a period of time where it was favorable to not have a British passport because there was potential of going to play professionally in Japan, where you could be registered, as an Asian player. And so, we were at that point. If a lot of our athletes, a lot of the players at the time were thinking about changing over. I never changed over, so I always competed under the British flag because of my passport in the Open. And then actually it was around the time when we started the Process Programming, our online coaching organization, which was, predominantly, our focus is on Asia, and that's where we are based. And I actually thought, I should actually probably be putting myself on the Asian leaderboard. I mean, not that I think my performances hold much weight, but who knows, if people see me in the Asian leaderboard, it might, bring credibility to the programming and the coaching that we're doing. So I actually, I don't know how many people who are not elite athletes change their passport just for the Open, but I was one of those people. I basically applied for a Hong Kong passport, so I hold a dual passport now, just to move over to the Chinese leaderboard for the Open.
I think that is a great thing. And I think that in many ways, kind of leading by example, especially for the people that you're going to be working with and will be looking to it. It's quite frankly, it's like a spiritual discipline as well. Like if you're a leader of a community, you should hold yourself to a certain standard that when people say, like, well, why should I do what you're saying that you're doing? If you're doing it, that's a pretty good argument in and of itself.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think we both agree, and it's very much one of our values here at Coastal in the Process, and practicing what you preach. And it doesn't mean you have to be the best athlete to be a good coach. I don't really believe that the best coaches make the best athletes make the best coaches necessarily, but to be putting yourself through challenges in the training process, it keeps you relevant in terms of your knowledge on the sport and how to then help others. So even though being an athlete is not one of my goals anymore. It's certainly every time I compete and do the open and do little competitions, it allows me to help the people that I serve as a coach so much more, including this guy.
Including that guy. When and so how did this thing kind of enter into your life? This, CrossFit or whatever it was that kind of got you into this path that you guys have been doing for 10 plus years. What was the driving factor, the connection that made that possible initially?
So for me, I think probably Ed and I actually both quite similar. As Ed said before, we were both rugby players before. I guess semi-professional. Rugby in Hong Kong we were both international players, and it was moving towards a professional setup where players would essentially be on full-time contracts, and that would be what you ended up doing. I ended up retiring at the ripe old age of 24 years old from the Hong Kong rugby international scene. Honestly, just fell out of love with the process of training day in, day out. The way that Hong Kong rugby is that it hosts a huge event called the Hong Kong Rugby Sevens every year. And essentially what was happening is that I was training for 11 months of the year to basically do a 3-day competition, which was, I know it's probably not far off from what CrossFit is. But honestly, it was tough sometimes that, you're in a team environment and you feel like you're giving everything that you can possibly give to the setup of the team environment. But then suddenly there's other people who are not giving the same and things are out of your control. So I kind of just fell out of love with the process. I still love rugby as a sport and I love competition. And I think it's a part of my DNA. Ed had started out Coastal Fitness at the time, which was just a freelance personal training business. We were living at home with our mum and dad, which was on a boat in Hong Kong, out in the sticks a little bit. Ed was kind of running the business in the clubhouse of the marina where the boat was docked. And I came back to Hong Kong after university and he asked me if I'd like to join. And it was kind of like a quite an obvious transition into it. I love sport, love helping people, love the growth that came along with it in terms of being a coach. And then one of our other coaches who later joined the team was a huge fan of Chris Spieler. So as you can imagine, like Chris Spieler, this friend, a guy called Andy, was very small, quite not a massive guy, but
he's a hard gainer is a polite way to put it.
He's a hard gainer. There you go. But he took a lot of inspiration from Chris Spieler. So then he obviously started watching his videos, saw things like his 100 unbroken pull-ups and do all these crazy things at the games where he's pushing the sled with his head. So then CrossFit kind of became a part of Andy's life, and then he was a part of our organization. So he's like, you guys got to try this. You're not competing anymore. And he kept saying, I'll sign you up to the open. I was like, I don't know what this open thing is. I don't want to do it. Just basically leave me alone. I'm just trying to get jacked. That's what I want to do. And eventually just down the line, I think the same old story for most people. He asked me to do Fran. I did Fran. Didn't lock out a bar overhead once. I'm pretty sure I did basically 45 bench presses and definitely didn't hit parallel on any squats. Chin definitely didn't pass the bar. But it was a hard ass workout and I kind of fell in love with it. And he's like, you can be competitive within this crazy thing called CrossFit. Started to dive a bit deeper and I managed to make regionals that year, qualified me to South Korea for the Asia regionals. And I guess that was it. That was like the start of my CrossFit journey. I guess going back to the rugby stuff, like there was a lot more control around what I was doing. I could take, full ownership of my training, my nutrition, my sleep, how I compete and do all that sort of stuff, which is very different to the team side of rugby, which I had before. So that was my journey into it.
Yeah.
And go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, well, I was just going to add to that. I think mine was actually slightly different. Very, very, very similar in the sense that, I just felt that my time with rugby had come to an end. And a big driving factor for that was the fact that I'd already set up Coastal Fitness and was coaching a lot of people and knew that was really that's where I belonged. That's what I really wanted to do. And I got to a point where rugby was actually getting in the way of me doing the thing I really wanted to do, which was, to coach people and to grow this coaching business. So, I had a lot of my early education as a player came from the classical strength and conditioning side of things. So then that led me to, learn from guys like Charles Poliquin and get those certifications early on in my coaching career. And And if you know anything about Charles Poliquin, you know, it's very structured. It's very linearly progressed. It's how you train Olympians. And so a lot of my early education as an athlete and a coach was, you know, around those methodologies. And then this guy, Andy, and Ant actually, you know, started kind of playing around with CrossFit workouts. And I actually just thought it was the dumbest thing ever. I was like, this goes against every principle that I'd ever learned about strength and conditioning. Like, you know, it's no longer about structure. It's no longer about progression. It's like constantly varied, you know, do all this high intensity stuff. Loads of movement patterns in my eyes were missing. So we basically signed up to the very first ever level 1 in Asia, in Singapore. And I think Ant and Bratz and Andy, the other guy, were more, you know, like they'd kind of like been hooked a little bit. And I was like I was a pessimist. I was like, I want to go to this thing and ask the guy or girl, whoever's delivering the seminar, you know, a bunch of questions so I can learn a little bit more and understand how this thing works. And lo and behold, I went there, didn't really learn anything, didn't get any of my questions answered, came back even more confused as to how to make this work, right? So I'm like, okay, we're playing around with the training now. It's kind of fun, but I'm like, I have no systems as to how to prescribe this anymore. Like, I can't just be writing random workouts down, which is obviously what we did to start, just write random workouts and then, you know, just seeing that wasn't really working. So yeah, it was more out of the curiosity as a coach, I guess, and someone who, you know, really, I find movement quite fascinating and I love all disciplines and trying all different methodologies. And yeah, that's how I first started. Honestly, it wasn't until I finally understood how you could make this work. And that was, you know, James Fitzgerald was a very early influence to me in the early days of OPEX. Before it was called OPEX, it was called OPT back in the day. And it was, OPT was like basically the first time where I was like, oh, okay, this kind of makes sense. You can kind of like, you can take this sport, this random, constantly varied sport, create structures and systems to it. And then, you know, now it's a bit more logical in my head. And I guess that was my initial journey. And I guess the athlete side of things was that, you know, we'd both just been so competitive our whole lives, you know, with one another, but also in the sports that we played. And because I'd fallen out of love of rugby, it was like, well, where do I channel this now? And it was like, okay, this CrossFit thing, I'm kind of okay with it. You know, there's lots of things I couldn't do. Like I've had so many operations from rugby on shoulders and knees that like mobility was super hard for me. But then that was, you know, that really interested me because I was like, okay, you can learn, I've got to figure out this new thing now, learn about movement, learn about mobility. How can I overhead squat something more than a broomstick? And then that was kind of like that was my journey into CrossFit. Also somehow qualified as an individual that year in 2014. And then they prescribed, and then I saw the programming and they programmed strict handstand push-ups. That was the first year strict handstand push-ups being put into the regionals programming.
That workout was disgusting. Front squats at 205, burpees over the bar, and strict handstand push-ups was like 21, 15, 12, 9, 6, 3 or something. And people, I went to the Northeast Regional and people were just stopped in their tracks. Even a guy that got top 10 worldwide in the open couldn't do it.
Yeah, mate, that was me. You know, I could do over 30 kipping handstand push-ups, and I think I could do one strict handstand push-up. And so when those workouts came out, I was like, okay, I'm not sure if I'm ready for this yet. So I went team that year. And then after that year, you know, hired a coach, you know, worked with Training Think Tank for 7 years, you know, under their tutelage in their early days as well. You know, kept on getting better, but realized pretty quickly that I didn't have what it took to be, you know, at the level that that was our first training camp.
And Max is probably a branch or descendant of the OPT tree as well.
Yeah.
So is Brian.
Yeah, Brian as
believe
well.
it or not. Brian
I
had
have
very
a
similar
CCP
story.
One, yes.
Yeah.
So at the time that this was all kind of happening for the two of you, what was maybe I'll just add this in there now, because in that was 2014. And basically you're saying I was able to qualify and I got to that stage of competition. There were things I couldn't do. That is still happening in Asia, where there are still athletes that are qualifying for the semifinals. And there's going to be more this year than there ever have been that can't do. They're getting zeros on workouts. They can't do some of the things that are being asked of them. So just kind of having that as a perspective, when I ask you guys this, at that time, what was already going on in Hong Kong or in China as far as CrossFit was concerned before you guys knew it, or at the time that you found out about it?
I mean, I'm happy to kick it off. I mean, honestly, nothing really. There wasn't, we were the second ever CrossFit gym to open in Hong Kong. And the original guys who've been doing it for a while were very much more on like the CrossFit.com bandwagon. So when we opened, I feel like we had an advantage already coming from a high performance sport like rugby, working with some really great strength and conditioning coaches, being exposed to smart strength and conditioning for a very early age. I shouldn't say smart, like, structured strength and conditioning. We were just doing something different right from the start. So when we kind of like entered the CrossFit space, we were already doing something different. We didn't have mentors here. There wasn't coaches or people that we could like learn from. So, I would have to fly to other countries in Asia to like learn how to snatch and how to clean and jerk, because there was just no one here teaching that. We flew all over the world to get certifications, to learn from like, who we thought the best in the business was. And really we kind of just like, and even probably today, honestly, like existed in our little bubble of just trying to just push the needle forward in terms of not only developing ourselves as athletes, but developing a methodology that we can then pass on to individuals who wanted to pursue the sport as well. But also, general population who loved the idea of CrossFit. But, had already been washed up, burnt out, broken, injured, had reached plateaus, very early on. This is still 2015, right? That was already happening. So, we kind of came in and said, like, how do we do this? How do we do this differently? How do we not just, wind up doing all the same things that everyone else is doing? And how can we, because if it felt, for me especially, it felt like a massive disservice having people come into your gym, paying a premium price, and like seeing them do things where I would, sometimes cover my eyes being like, oh no, like that, you should not be doing that. And it's I realized I had to take responsibility for that, right? Because it was like, I'm the one prescribing it. I'm the one coaching you. But it was just not sitting right. And then, when I talk about this, it sounds like there was just like this light bulb moment, but it wasn't. It was like years and years and years of just making mistakes and place my hand in my eyes and just being like, okay, that has to change. And then I think eventually it just evolved to the point where we're at today, where we think, we got a good system and a good methodology to do it. But, when you talk about Asia, which I think where your question's going, it is very much like a bubble. I think something that's hard about Asia is that you've got all these different countries, but language is a really big barrier, right? So we've got Hong Kong, which is a very multicultural country where predominantly everyone speaks English. Most of our clientele here everyone speaks English in our gym. Very much an expat community. Then you go to China, and China really, like, if you don't speak mainland Chinese, Putonghua, then you're not really getting around that place. They exist on their own social media platform.
Do you guys speak that?
We don't. A
little bit. We can say hi. We can say bye. We can order some food. We can get around in taxis.
We're rubbish Eurasians. Yeah, we should really speak it, but we don't. But I mean, that's a genuine problem, right? Then you go to Korea. Korea have high caliber athletes, so much potential physically, and like an elite sporting culture at school level. But it's very hard for us to infiltrate there and help the people because the language is just completely different. You go to Japan, same issue, and you kind of have these issues in China. So really, like, everyone is is working individually as a country, as a nation. And unless you have someone, I guess, like us, who are doing this kind of stuff and pushing it forward, then what happens is that certain countries just get left behind. And I think, we're lucky in a sense in Hong Kong. We got Ant, who's an incredible ambassador, and right from the very start was obviously had talent for the sport. And so he's just progressed. And, there's been many guys and girls who were on the regional scene in 2014 at the same time. And, Ant came onto stage, who have just, they've just flatlined for 8 years. And, I see them competing now, and I'm like,
didn't have as good of a coach.
Right. But that's it. You see, and it's kind of frustrating actually, because you see so much talent and opportunity, and there's just still doing the same things, same mistakes, not working on, still have the same glaring weaknesses as they did 8 years ago, and you kind of just feel like, oh, I wish I could help this person. Have you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I think. I think to start, when we first qualified, to regionals in South Korea, I don't think there would have been a CrossFit affiliate in China. I've no idea if there would have been or not. And now they're popping up like 7-Elevens are in America. Like they're literally everywhere. And I think, with China, to the outside world, China is very, very different in terms of how they do their grassroots. Grassroots stuff in China, you're generally selected. You don't choose. They look at you and they see how your body is built, and they see short femurs and a short torso. They're like, all right, you're going to be a weightlifter. Off you go. 5 years old, you're snatching, 50 kg, 115 pounds already. I see her on the background. You're already snatching a lot of weight as like a kid, and like that is all you know. So then as soon as CrossFit kind of came along, because what happens is that you're brought up in this like elite grassroots system, and if you're not a potential gold medalist, you basically get dropped from the program. And once you get dropped, then where do you go? And then suddenly now where CrossFit is that it's picking up a lot of those people who are kind of getting dropped to the side of like gymnastics, weightlifting, and these Olympic level sports, because we know that China invests so much money into the Olympic programs. Anything that has got the potential to put you on a world stage and a gold medal around your neck, China will chuck money towards it. So a lot of these people now who have fallen out of those high level elite programs are now filtering down into sports like CrossFit, which is why you're suddenly seeing a few more high level Chinese athletes. And, like Ed said, Korea has always been pretty strong within the CrossFit circle. Japan's always been pretty strong, but what Ed said, it's definitely been within our own little bubbles each time, and it's hard to kind of work with these other countries because of the language and sometimes even cultural barrier as well.
I got to ask you guys, I'm looking at the CrossFit affiliate map. If I'm reading this correctly, do you think this is possible that there are 200 CrossFit affiliates in Seoul, South Korea?
Yeah, for sure.
That is what it says.
Yeah,
that's true.
I believe it.
I want to add like another issue is that, most high level CrossFitters, their journey starts as a coach, right? So a lot of the high level CrossFitters start as a coach. They're able to, perhaps make a living for themselves there, which then frees up the time and energy to be able to, dedicate to their craft of being an athlete. I also think something that is affecting Asia's growth of athletes is because the gym business isn't necessarily, I think there's room for improvement is probably the way I can put it. And so what's happening is that, it's a hard industry for coaches to make sustainable in terms of finances, but also in terms of, developing themselves year on year on year. So because of that, you have a lot of potential, where athletes can, have the potential to be something great and they're coaches, but they just can't make the profession side work. And so they either drop out of the coaching industry altogether, which tends to go hand in hand with, dropping out of CrossFit the sport as well. So I think it does start, at the top as well. So you have a lot of great athletes who have huge potential, just kind of stop after 3, 4, 5 years. But I do know, in China right now, there's people like, Max and Carrie who, host the Asia CrossFit Championships, who are doing a really good job, who've seen now, that there is potential. I mean, there is so much potential in terms of talent there. I think no one can argue with that. You take some of the best gymnasts and weightlifters and athletes and you've channeled them into CrossFit. It's kind of scary to think what they could be producing. But I think, Max is now thinking about, creating sponsorship opportunities, endorsement deals for athletes so that they can, move out of the coaching space, which isn't that professional over there right now, and, give these people a chance to actually, crush something. I mean, if you have a look, that post there of Alex just above that one you clicked on, Brian, he's a weightlifter who's like 23 years old. He's snatching 140, he's clean jerking 170, 180,
185.
And this guy's eating whatever the hell he wants. He has no idea about the mindset side of things. It's still like he just go hard as he can in every workout. The pacing side isn't there. But you look at someone like that and you're like, wow, like so much potential for someone who can already do so much amazing stuff that it's like, okay, you kind of want to be able to, I mean, we were just talking about it after this competition where Ant was competing and I was coaching. We had a lot of athletes competing in this competition, which was like, I don't think it's unrealistic to say that someone from China is going to be competing at the CrossFit Games, in the next few years. if they can have the guidance to get there.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You can think about some of the best CrossFitters that have ever done it, and Matt Fraser had a weightlifting background, and he did it as a young man. And how many people are doing that in China that have comparable lifting numbers to him? And if there's 1,000 guys like that, is there a chance that in the right environment, one or two of them have also the mindset and the discipline to achieve something similar? Like, why couldn't that be the case?
For sure. Yeah, I think as well, something that I observed being in China recently was that just Chinese culture in general is, it makes the mental side of sport a little bit more challenging for these guys, because, talking about your feelings, talking about emotions, talking about struggles, all things that are very prevalent in high level sport. And I think we're seeing a lot more in CrossFit now, people coming forward and being a bit more outspoken about the struggles and what they're dealing with. Even things like sleep, nutrition, stress management, really kind of important parts that an athlete needs to understand and grasp outside of the training room. Those things aren't talked about in China, in culture at all. And there's no one really, there aren't influencers, people out there who are putting that information out that people are like latching onto right now. So the CrossFit community is kind of like where Hong Kong was kind of 6 to 8 years ago, probably where the US was like 10 years ago. So right now it's like this hype for like doing hard stuff and training really, really hard and training twice a day and, living like an athlete, but training like an athlete, but, not living like an athlete. And, I think we all know what can happen with that is you're going to get the cream of the crop. They might rise to the top and keep on doing it, and everyone else kind of just burns out and gets broken and moves to something else. So it's kind of like ripe right now for someone to come in, which again, like I think Max and Carrie are starting to put the pieces in place now to really like take hold of these guys and girls at a young age and, foster them and give them the skills and the knowledge, not just the training hard part, because they can do that. Everyone can do that already, but it's all the other stuff. If you can get that stuff dialed in, and I think they've got huge, huge potential.
Do you think the reason why it can't be either you or Ant kind of leading this charge for China is because of you're in Hong Kong and you're looked at as, I guess, essentially colonists?
Yeah, not so much. I think right now, I think it's been pretty amazing. Ant flying the Chinese flag at the CrossFit Games,
100%,
and that has definitely, I think in the first year you did that, there wasn't as much like backing from the Chinese people. It was kind of like, okay, this guy's got a Chinese flag. He doesn't look that Chinese though. So we don't really, associate with him. But I think for him, like being at the top now consistently for so many years, when we went to Shanghai for this competition, man, Ant was taking photos every 5 seconds. There was a queue of people just who all knew who he was, who wanted to take a photo, wanted to meet him. And it was really like amazing for me to see, because it's like, wow, the people really see him now as a bit of a hero. And because of that, I think that's having an influence now on the people over there. Ant's now got his own social media page, on the Chinese platforms, which I'm sure is, helping to create a bit more influence on what he does and what other people can do. So, really what we need to do and what we are doing right now, actually, we're in the start of, is partnering with someone in China, to basically work together to be able to make change and make impact. Because, things like the languages, things like social media platforms, all of those things are completely different that we really, that's just so far.
Do you have to, like, the way that you speak about him getting a page or a platform on that social media outlet is it like an invitation based, or you have to apply for it? Can I just sign up for one?
Yeah, anyone can sign up for it, but like you can't navigate it because it's only in Mandarin, so it's near impossible. I mean, the social media platforms are totally different. The means of communication are totally different. No one uses like iMessage or WhatsApp over in China. It's all on a different platform called WeChat. Yeah. Exactly. Like Instagram it's available over there if you use a VPN. But otherwise you use what they call a little red book, which is a Xiaohongshu, which is the equivalent of Instagram. Or WeChat is also like an amazing app which deals with everything. like everything you could possibly want to do on an app, WeChat would be able to do it for you. And it's only really available within China, to be honest.
Brian, when I went to China in 2019, it's like I didn't realize like you pay everything through WeChat. Everything is through WeChat.
Yeah, credit cards
amazing.
don't work unless it's through WeChat.
Yeah. Looking back, when we talked, I asked you about going back to the Asia Fitness Championships, and you said it was amazing compared to the first time you were there. I mean, and I guess it's kind of hard for me to explain it to Brian because when we were there in 2019, it was just in the volleyball arena. But then watching that highlight there, it looked like the volleyball arena was packed. And then you go, and then they actually took advantage of the outside, the track, and just seeing just the community. I mean, is that all Max? And is that? I mean, how did that happen? I mean, obviously you said you were surprised by it, but what can we attribute that to? That growth?
Yeah, I think. Well, I mean, look again. I think like what I was saying before about the elite level of like lifting and track athletes or gymnasts or whatever that might be have now filtered down towards CrossFit has now led to the growth of like so many CrossFit gyms in China. Okay. And it's not just CrossFit gyms, it's also just the health and fitness industry in China is now enormous. The Chinese government actually also throw money at people who want to start up a gym. They highly encourage it within the provinces, and they'll literally provide money, help to seek out space to build gyms to help the communities become more healthy and more health conscious. And obviously CrossFit can thrive from that as well. In terms of CrossFit itself within Shanghai, absolutely. Like Max and Carrie have done an amazing job. And they started off, what was their first gym called? Project One Nation. It was called One Nation. And I believe they were actually linked in at the time with a Ham Plan, which is like the Austin Malleolo, James Hobart, Spencer Hendel, those guys. And then during COVID, I think they went through a bit of a tough time. Like a lot of, Asia was basically closed for 3 years to most of us over here. So it was a tough time. And I know Max and Carrie did an amazing job of kind of diversifying a little bit away from One Nation and making the new business, which is called Project One. And they now have multiple affiliates within Shanghai. And they're leading things like the Asia Fitness Championships, which is just providing people with an amazing opportunity to compete at almost games level events. And, the sort of space that you're provided with at the games to test things like, 200-meter sandbag carries, swimming events, high straps and all that sort of thing, which you don't normally see at all in any other events around Asia. So yeah, I think, Carrie and Max have been doing an amazing job of kind of flying the flag for CrossFit within China for sure.
Are there competitions that are like just for China, in national competitions, or just like local competitions that only the Chinese are doing? Because they're not very well represented in the game season. Outside of you, there was one other man, one other woman, and one team that was at the semifinal last year. Like, are they competing somewhere else, or are there just not that many of them?
There's a lot of them. I mean, there is a lot of them. And, honestly, I think China is very similar to Dubai. I mean, you guys are just in Dubai as well. And you guys probably saw that after DFC, there was immediately Grove Games. And there's going to be another one in Saudi Arabia, then another one in Abu Dhabi. And like every weekend, there's a competition. China is honestly like very similar. But, even for us being here in Hong Kong, like I struggle to hear about it because it all goes through this WeChat platform. And I'm not really very prevalent on it, and I don't use it very much. So I miss out on a lot of opportunities as well. Also, like China's not the easiest country.
You could be cleaning up every weekend.
I could be, yeah. But yeah, for sure, like China is it's not the easiest country to get into. Like a lot of people need visas to get into. So yeah, it's like, and again, travel around domestically is not that easy as well because everything is in Mandarin. If you don't have access to translation apps and all that sort of stuff, it can also be quite daunting to try and travel around a huge country like China.
What do you think the reception would be like if people like us came there to meet their CrossFit community?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you build yourself a little red book page, Brian, and you brush up on your Mandarin, I think you could be an absolute hit.
I would just say, I'm just like, Max, please just host me and take me around and don't let me get lost.
I
think the kind of answer that, well, Ed, if I don't know if I'm stepping on your toes here, but when in 2019, when Rich was there, it obviously Max did a good job of kind of facilitating and helping out people recognize, but I think for the most part, everyone knew who Rich Froning was and the Mayhem team was, and Fikowski, and obviously Ant, because Ant was, he was the champion. I mean, I think Max did a good job of kind of like, I guess, facilitating that and kind of maybe serving as an interpreter and kind of explaining who Rich Froning is to some of these people who CrossFit wasn't new to. But that, again, that's 2019. It looks like it's grown tremendously since then.
Yeah, I have something to add to that as well. I think Ant kind of touched on this earlier. The pandemic was really hard for China. I think it probably got hit harder than anyone else. And I think there was a lot of CrossFit gyms in China pre-pandemic and a lot closed down during the pandemic. And what we're seeing now is this kind of resurgence post-pandemic of people, firstly, the country, the nation, like really seeing the value in exercise and movement. And then, CrossFit gyms now springing up and basically being the vehicle to like help people, as well as like 24-hour gyms and Barry boot camps and all that kind of stuff that's happening around the world. There's just kind of fitness. Everyone's gone a bit fitness crazy over there. However, the recent announcement, I think there's a couple of things. Number one, the CrossFit affiliate model, I think has rubbed a lot of people in China up the wrong way. I think China felt very isolated, and a lot of these gyms in struggling times paying affiliation fees felt like they didn't get the support that they were hoping for, and were kind of just left alone and kind of just whistled away, and then just had to close down business. I think most recently this increase in potential affiliation fees that has been announced, that has been like the dagger in the coffin for a lot of people over there. And they're really, if there was any distrust before or lack of faith, I think that's really been cemented now. So, China being a very, they take a lot of national pride in China. What they're now looking for is, okay, well, rather than us looking to, the US to help us out here, like, why can't some local hero do this for us? Like, let's support a local business, and let's have someone who's on the ground, who knows the language, who knows the social media platforms, have someone like that actually help us build good businesses and build, an affiliate network. And so really that's kind of where this all links into Max and Carrie, and I guess I can speak about confidence because I've been speaking to Max a lot about this and how we can all work together to impact more people in China and Asia. And so, a lot of people basically kind of looking to someone like him who's been in the game for a long time, who has worked with HQ, they actually had, an affiliate deal for a long time where they were kind of like and obviously the sanctioned event in 2018, 19, whenever that was. So now people are kind of looking to him to be like, how do you actually help us? Like, we need help running businesses. We need help educating coaches. We need to know how to run a good coaching business. And right now we're not getting any support from anywhere else. So that's kind of like, Max has this great opportunity now, which he's most definitely taking by the horns and, can really influence people. I think one of the big lessons that he learned, by running the ACC, which is where we first met Paddy, where, Ant finished on the podium. I think what they noticed then was that it was really cool having people like Rich and people there, but it didn't really, once that competition wrapped up and finished, it didn't have an impact. Yeah. It didn't have this like ripple effect onto people like, wanting to be better, businesses wanting to get better. And I think that's really it. It was like, okay, cool, there's athletes doing it, but like, Ant was the local hero really. And even back then, he wasn't really the local hero just yet. And I think that's what people wanted. They wanted like more like national, local pride, someone from China who's doing the thing, who's being successful. And so, I don't know, this is now I'm just kind of going back to your question, Brian. It's like, independent organizations like yourselves who are, just representing, the sport and methodology, not so much being from HQ. I think that could be really great, reestablishing those connections with the US. So I think, I don't know, I'm not really sure if someone from HQ came down or, sending high level athletes. I think Max and the team has realized that that's not really how they're going to make a big impact in China, just by flying, high profile athletes there to compete.
Does China have a country manager?
Yes.
Yeah, that's Liang. You were just on his profile.
Yeah. Okay, I wasn't sure if he still was the country manager. I know he's probably the only L4 in China, and he's like connected to Greg Glassman. I'm like, he's OG like CrossFit. But is he also kind of the country manager for, I guess, like Hong Kong as well? I mean, that's who you communicate. I mean, so what are you hearing from him? I mean, do you communicate with him very often?
Yes. So I actually just recently did a talk at the Asia Pacific CrossFit Summit, which happened in Macau a couple of months ago. So Liang basically hosted that and ran it all. And I think he does actually a good job more recently, I guess post COVID. Like he's dropped into here a couple of times. He's reached out to me for a couple of opportunities. He's been really good with that. But again, I guess even though Liang's doing a great job with it, like he kind of came out of nowhere. Like I had no idea who he was at the time. There's just some guy messaging me being like, "Hey, can you come do a speech?" I was like, "Who the hell is this guy? Like, where am I going to give a speech from?" Like, and then suddenly he comes into our gym at Coastal Fitness with like this amazing copper plaque, which basically says, "Thank you for 10 years of service to CrossFit." And we're like, has he just made this himself? Like literally like engraved it himself and like brought it in. But then like suddenly he's taken it to like all these gyms around China and Hong Kong. And I was like, oh shit, he must be connected to HQ somehow. And like, yes, now of course he's connected to dots, and he's actually super good dude, and he loves it, and he wants nothing but the best for CrossFit and for people who do the methodology. But yeah, maybe he's just not known enough around the area.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And so this year was kind of like you guys have been alluding to, this was a bit of a surprise the way that this year turned out in terms of your professional career, Ant. And it seems like it's had a big impact, even kind of like everything was maybe building towards this year.
Yeah. This year was certainly a bit of a whirlwind. Yeah, I mean, I was always going to the games because we've got one of our masters athletes here who's like a podium contender within her category. I'm lucky enough to call myself her coach, but Ed and I both coach her throughout the year. And so I was going anyway. And then to get like a bit of a random email to say, hey, we know you're going to be at the games. You fancy giving us your shirt sizes so we can make you some T-shirts and you compete in a 4-day competition? And I genuinely thought it was a mistake. I thought someone was screwing with me, and like, I clicked the link to pay and like the link was a dud. It didn't work. I was like, oh, someone's literally screwed me over here. And then, the next day Angel reached out, said like, no, I need your sizes now. Like, if you want to do this, like you need to get over here. I was like, oh shit. Okay. I got 2 weeks to prep myself and get ready to rock and roll. So it was that was a kit I got ended up getting issued, I guess. So I went over there. Unfortunately Ed couldn't make it just because we had both actually committed to going to one of our good friends' weddings over in Scotland. So I had to pull the pin on that a week before. So it was a bit of a crazy experience. But yeah, I'd do it all again if I could, if I had the chance to. This is really once in a lifetime opportunities, and yeah, I had an amazing time there, and I think I managed to grab the bull by the horns and give it a good old whack. But
I mean, and you did go to the CrossFit Games in 2019.
Yes, I did. As national champion of China, I did go to the games then as well,
and did
finish 27th.
Yeah, did all right. You got cut in the same round as Fikowski and I don't know, Ben Smith. You made
Chandler.
1 round farther than Jeff Adler did. It was just a strange year.
Yeah, it was strange. Yeah.
For the test that you were given, like you did fine. There were 150 guys. You ended up 27th.
Yeah.
And but it sounds like this year had a bigger impact on China or CrossFit in Asia than the 2019 did, probably because every country sent someone in 2019, so it wasn't that big of a deal.
Exactly, yeah. And I think like Ed was saying, I think the support for me personally has grown quite drastically within China. And whether that's just because of things like myself getting social media pages or just the sport growing in general. And I also just think, honestly, having a China flag next to my name plays a big role as well, versus having a Hong Kong flag next to my name. There's millions of people out there who are doing this within China who are kind of don't really have a voice. Again, because Ed said, language barriers and lack of connection to the outside world from China. So yeah, I guess like I'm the person who represents them, and it's a huge opportunity. And I get so many amazing messages from people that I've never met, and people who I have probably walked past a couple of times here and there, and people who I've maybe brushed shoulders with a few times. And it's been really nice this year to kind of experience that and experience the support from all those people. It was definitely a little bit lonely walking around that North Park as the only person under the China flag. But yeah, I mean, it's great. I think I'm very grateful to the people of China and everyone who I represent when I'm over there at the games and any of these events. So yeah, it's definitely been a big year for me.
And then, I mean, you got the invite to Dubai this year. I believe that was the second time you competed in Dubai, though.
That's actually the third time I competed in Dubai. I think I did 2015, 2016, and then again this year, 2023. Yeah, it was again like another opportunity, which like definitely.
I just gotta throw this out there. I have a collection of all of the athletes who've ever competed in Dubai from every year, but I'm missing 3 years. I only have the podiums from 2012, 14, and 15. So if by any chance you have a record of 2015, I'd love to get it.
of who was on the podium?
No, of the rest of the people there. I only have the podium finishers, and then it's blank from fourth the rest of the way down. I have not, and people who are much better at searching the deep dives of the web than me have tried, and we cannot find 2012, 14, or 15, men or women, full list.
Tell me who was on the podium in 2015. Is that Noah Olsen?
Yeah, Olsen, Agidius, and Rasmus Anderson.
Okay, so who else was there? People like Kenny Leverage, he was there. Who else was
Travis.
there? No, Travis not there. He was the year after.
You're talking about the first year. Well, Mitch Bernard.
Yeah. Mitch Bernard was there. God, who else was there that year? There was
Elliot Simmons was there.
Elliot Simmons, Miko Rumpa. Yeah, I'll send you a text. I'll send you a DM later on of everyone who I can remember who was in who's at DSC that year.
Cool. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, so I mean, I think obviously when you get an invite to the games, and it of course unlocks a lot of opportunities for you through sponsorships, through partnerships, through invitations to future events, and very lucky to get the invite to DFC this year. I think not having been able to prep the way that I would love to have prepped for the games kind of left my body a little bit broken after the CrossFit Games, because I don't think I was really prepared for it. And then, I think you've pulled up a few times, Pat, already. The few times I've already done Asia CrossFit Championships this year, and I went to DFC. I think my body's just been a little bit sore, a little bit broken. And, of course, I am definitely an aging athlete as well. I'm almost going to be in the Masters 35 division next year as well. No, the year following.
Don't forget, you also did a High Rocks event, too, at some point in semifinals.
Also did High Rocks, and probably maybe bit off a little bit more than I could chew this year, but that's okay. It's just part of the learning process, and I'll be taking it easy. I'm going on holiday for the first time in a long time tomorrow, actually, with Ed, with our family, to Thailand. And I'll be definitely taking a little bit of time off, which honestly I've been scared to do for the last 10 years. I think when you're in a sport, especially as like an individual sport, as I was talking about before, I feel there's a lot of responsibility and pressure that I put on myself, not from anyone else, that I need to be constantly training. I need to be weighing and measuring all my food. I need to like not be going on nights out with friends and family and not drinking and stuff, and whatever it might be. And I think that pressure is kind of built up, and over the last few years I've been learning to try and get rid of that pressure and just be a little bit more human versus just being an athlete all the time. So I'll try to do that over this Christmas, New Year's break, and then get back at it when I get back from holiday. But yeah, we got a big 2024 lined up, of course.
What part of Thailand are you going to?
I'm going to Phuket. You going to be there?
Ooh.
I've been there, but I won't be there next week. No.
Hey,
it's been 10 years since I was in Thailand.
Yeah.
Ed, what's kind of the hardest thing for you coaching your brother, especially when you're not able to be there? Because I know you haven't been to any of the Korean semifinals, correct? or did you go this past year?
Yeah, no, I was there. I think the only event that I missed was the CrossFit Games this year, which was really hard actually to not be a part of. As Ant said, we had the wedding all booked in, and I had all our flights were booked. I was traveling with my fiance, and I was kind of like, when I got the message from Ant being like, just got invited to the games, I kind of like looked at the phone. I was like, how would this go down? I did contemplate it though. I'm not gonna lie.
She was like, no chance, Ed.
yeah. I was wise enough to not even present the idea to her. But yeah, that was definitely hard. Not being there. Because we've worked together now for how many years?
Since 2016.
Yeah, 2016. So I think that the coach-athlete relationship has really just evolved a lot. And I think one of my missions with everyone that I coach is autonomy. I want to be able to give that person all the tools and teach them what they need to be taught, so that ultimately they can go out and do the thing by themselves without me. And so that's Ant is the kind of poster child for that. In terms of what he needs from me on a daily basis, and in a competition is very minimal. I'm just really there for support, to discuss a last minute strategy, to keep him on time, to make his protein shakes. That's kind of like my role at competitions now. And I think for Ant doing the CrossFit Games last year, being a really high standard competition, and being alone, I think not only reminded him like how important it is to have a team around you, but also reminded me as well just how important it is for me to be there. So, on a day-to-day basis, I get asked that question a lot, what's it like coaching your brother? And I think, in our early years, when we were both a little bit less emotionally mature than we are now, for sure, there were times that we'd butt heads, and, it was hard to associate what hat we were wearing at the time. So like, are we coach athlete right now? Are we employee? Are we colleagues? Are we brothers? Are we family members? And sometimes that can get all really jumbled up, and you forget, who you need to be at that specific moment in time. But I think generally, as our relationship has just evolved as people, regardless of the label, it has made navigating hard times in all those different areas pretty easy, actually. So yeah, I'm really just kind of here to support. And we openly communicate about how he wants feedback given to him. I know that I can't just in the middle of a snatch session, if I see something, be like, hey Ant, fix this, because that's just going to piss him off and it's going to ruin the rest of his hour. So because of just that experience and that time together, I think we've just worked, created a really mutually understandable way of how we communicate and what we really need from each other. And then it's just just regularly checking in, like, hey, what do you need from me? What do I need from you? And then just the relationship has really just evolved.
Can you guys tell us a little bit about the community that you've built there? Obviously, Patrick's scrolling through this post that says 10 years of trusting the process, and you had a gym there, and you also have your coaching business. So that could be with regards to the people that are physically on site with you guys every day, or the evolution of that over the last 10 years, and or kind of remotely wherever your programming might reach to.
Yeah, I'm happy to roll this. I mean, so Coastal Fitness, the photos you're seeing right now, we actually set that up 15 years ago. So I basically graduated from university, came back, and knew pretty much straight away that I wanted to be a coach. Set up Coastal Fitness, and the first 4 years we were just, driving around in our cars. We'd stuff the boot with Bosu balls and boxing gloves and fake TRXs from China. And we would just go around and, train people all over Hong Kong. And that was basically how the coaching organization started. And then kind of 4 years later, we kind of, made that decision where it was like, we really want to have our own space and we want to have our own home. And, at this point in time, we'd already been delving into CrossFit and, we're experimenting a lot with ourselves. We're starting to understand the methodology, and we're confident enough to be able to run group classes with CrossFit being the methodology. So 2013, we did that, opened up our first facility. And, this where we're at right now is our second facility. But, we have, about 180, 190 people in our group class program. As this photo showing, we just had 26 people graduate as, 10 years or more members, which is super cool. And we have we have another 20 people who are on the 9-year mark and then the 8-year mark. So that was a really cool thing to be able to present. And I think, just personally reflecting back on that, it's pretty amazing that you have these people that have been with you for 10 years in many iterations of the company, and in good times and not so good times. So, our Coastal Fitness, the gym has, as I said, 180, 190 people in the group program. But we've got a really big individual coaching side to the business as well. So, personal training is a really big part of what we do over here. So that's Coastal Fitness. And then the process programming, that was really the start of the pandemic when we launched that business. We launched a podcast and we launched a process, and the process had been always something I wanted to do. I really wanted to create an online coaching organization and start, impacting more lives outside of just our gym. Because I felt like we were doing a really good job with the people that we were serving here every day. But I just felt like we had so much more to give, and how can we get that out there? To be honest, there just wasn't the technology. Like, there was no, Sugar World was probably the only people at the time who were allowing you to sell your online programming, and it was all kind of systemized for you. So probably 5-6 years ago is when I was like, okay, let's create an online coaching organization. And just no one had the technology to be able to do it. So what I was actually doing before we actually launched the process is on my Instagram every week, I would just say, hey, if anyone wants free programming, let me know. I've got this group program that we're running here at Coastal that's been really successful. I'll give you free access to it. And, all I ask in return is that you log all your results, and, I can then geek out over the data and use that to write programs. So I did that for 3 years. And by the end of that, I think we had over 200 people around the world, not just Asia, on our free program. So we kind of developed a bit of a reputation, I think, already. We're giving these people a lot and not charging a cent for it. And then when the pandemic started and then technology was suddenly there, the platform that we were using, we're like, okay, we've created this ability for you to be able to, build people and make this an actual business. We basically went full steam ahead with it, and then basically just built it from the ground up. What was really hard, of course, is that, we thought an online coaching organization was just write really good programs and connect with people via messages and Instagram, and it will just continue to flourish and grow. And then what we realized really quickly is that we love, the in-person connection, and that was missing from our online organization. So that's why we do so many things now. Like, we run athlete camps every year. We run at least 2 to 3 athlete camps every year, where we invite people to Hong Kong. We run a 2-day experience, or we go out to another country in Asia and, run a camp for 30 to 40 people. It's why we go to these competitions, as coaches, and are there to support our athletes and be there for them and bring the process community together. So that has been definitely a bit of a learning curve in the last year. It's like, we need to, although we're an online coaching organization, we want connection and community to be a big part of it. So that means now that, because in Hong Kong, we couldn't travel for the last 3 years. So we basically were stuck behind our computers trying to build this online business, and growth was just quite slow, to be honest. And it wasn't until we could start flying and traveling again and meeting all these people that we're now seeing in the last year a lot more growth in the company, predominantly in Asia, but also, in the US and in Europe and Australia. So yeah, very much that's going to be a part of what we continue to invest our time and energy into, not just great programs and not just connecting with people online, but actually being able to meet people in person. Even when we went to Dubai for DFC, 2 days before the competition, we managed to lock in a partnership with the gym and just invited anyone who wanted to join us for 2 hours. And we delivered a coaching workshop and a workout. And we had 30 people show up, and, we had an awesome session, made loads of new connections, had a lot of our online subscribers come and join us. And it's the first time in 3 years these guys have been on the program, the first time actually meeting them and shaking their hands and having a good time. It's pretty damn cool.
And you're pretty integrated into all of that?
Yeah, so myself and Ed are probably the two main coaches on the process programming. Like Ed was saying, with an online presence, there's a lot of people there to try and handle. So for sure, we try and do meetups, whether they're around Asia or if we're lucky enough to do them at places like the Games or Dubai. But we also have other programs as well where we do run high rocks programs. We also run functional bodybuilding for people who may not want to do something like CrossFit. But yeah, myself and Ed are the two main ones behind it. Ed does most of the programming. I do a lot of the back end stuff in terms of making sure the programming is spelt well. So if you ever see a spelling error on Ed's Instagram stories, which is every single day and every single post. That's just because he doesn't have me checking it. But yeah, no, myself and Ed basically heading that up as best as we can. And, we are looking to grow the team as well. So we're constantly looking out for coaches who are rock stars who basically want to join our team. We're currently in the process of trying to find a few more coaches to join us. But yeah,
Is that internationally, or do you prefer someone maybe more local to Hong Kong, China, or Asia?
Yeah, I think the beauty of the online business is that I think we actually have one team member now who is remote. She actually lives in Bangkok, and that's been kind of like our first experiment as to can we make this work with someone remotely? And it's been working really, really well. I mean, she was actually a part of the team here in Hong Kong for many years, so we have that relationship already. But I think, what we're seeing now is as the company is growing and, the impact we're making is becoming a little bit more visible to the outside world. There's a lot of people now reaching out to us who are wanting to be a part of what we're doing, which is really, really cool. And as Ant said, we got, how Coastal Fitness currently operates is kind of like, we're kind of part-time Coastal Fitness and we're part-time the process programming. We're dividing our time between what's happening in here and what's happening with the online program. I fully envision in the next year or so that's going to start. So we're going to have a full-time team with the process programming, giving a lot more time and energy towards that. And then we'll kind of have the Coastal Fitness team, looking after what's happening in this gym. But, both of the two things are very integrated. We have an affiliate program. So we've got 9 gyms, around Asia right now. And Coastal Fitness is really important because it's kind of like, this is the proof that we kind of know what to do with the gym. So I think, there was a point in time in the pandemic where, business was really hard. We were 2 weeks away from bankruptcy, when we were, by the end of our 1 year of closure, where, I was really considering maybe we shouldn't have a gym. Maybe this is, it's impossible to make this work. But then, being able to bounce back and, bring the business into more of a healthier financial position and kind of getting back to where we were pre-pandemic, it's really reminded me just how important it is to have a base like this, to have a headquarters where you see your team every day. You've got people coming in, you're impacting their lives. And I think the whole idea of living on a tropical beach somewhere and, running a business behind a laptop, that was probably something that really was attractive a few years ago. Having been through the pandemic now, I'm like, I actually don't want that. I want to be around people. And I think we both feel that really strongly. So yeah, as to how this kind of evolves, I think we both kind of see us having a process program at headquarters one day, where we've got outdoor space and, an opportunity to, have people travel to us in somewhere that's hot and tropical and nice. And, we can run camps and experiences all the time. But we also have a local community. I think that's something that we're kind of thinking about right now. But for the time being, the setup is working really nicely for us. Hong Kong's bouncing back after, a pretty turbulent few years. And, still seeing that this can be our home for sure. I think there was definitely points in time over the last 3 years where we were, as Hong Kong kids who've, felt very settled here for so long, we're really questioning whether this is somewhere we wanted to be. And it's really nice to see it kind of bounce back now and kind of reinstall a bit of faith in everyone here.
You speak about obviously the pandemic. It affected you probably, you and affiliates in China probably harder than most businesses or CrossFit gyms throughout the world because of the length of it, dealing with shutdowns, constant shutdowns and mandated shutdowns. As an athlete and also as a coach, Ed, I noticed that Ant, as an athlete, it was probably hard for you to train. So you made that move to Dubai, as did, and kind of followed the lead of a lot of the Russian athletes that were doing this kind of the same thing. I mean, what prompted that? How hard was it to kind of just basically leave during the pandemic when your business could be struggling? Like you said, you're a couple of weeks from bankruptcy to go train in Dubai to do this. How hard was that?
Yeah, I think so. I basically left Hong Kong on the last week of the CrossFit Open. I think is the day I left. We got told as a business that we weren't going to be opening our doors for a minimum of 4 months. So no matter what happened, if COVID just disappeared, we still weren't going to open our doors till April 21st. So, you know, we couldn't do anything in person over here. So, you know, I think I hadn't really competed. I hadn't competed anywhere apart from in-house at Coastal Fitness for like 2 years. And I was on course to qualify for this semifinals, the first in-person one in Busan. And I basically said, I was like, if I don't fly out now, Hong Kong airport might close down. I might not be able to fly out when the semifinals comes around. So do you mind if I go? And Ed said, like, there's not much for you to do here if you're sitting here. Like, as long as you can do it from a laptop over there, the stuff on the process, then, you know, go ahead and do it. Just, you know, still be a part of it as much as you can. So yeah, I essentially relocated. It's the first time I've ever relocated apart from university to another country. So yeah, to be honest, like I was scared. I was nervous. I knew a few people over there, but not that many people. We had a bit of a community with the process over there, but maybe like only, you know, 1 to 2 people. So I managed to move over, and, you know, CrossFit Alliance were very, very, very kind to me and took me in as one of their own. You know, I wasn't working as a coach there. Essentially, I was working online through the process, but otherwise I was just there to do my training. If people wanted help, I'd help them for free. And, you know, I ended up essentially coaching the CrossFit Alliance team, which ended up taking 3rd place at that semifinals in Busan. And yeah, I think just from me being there for 5 to 6 months, it was an amazing opportunity, but it was very stressful for myself, like just living out of a suitcase for 5 to 6 months, which I'd never done. I was constantly moving between apartments. I didn't really know what I was doing. There was no end date to it all because Hong Kong was still a bit of a mess. So yeah, I mean, I'm very grateful and lucky that, you know, we have the team back here to allow me to do something like that. But yeah, like Ed said, you know, we ended up being 2 weeks away from bankruptcy, and it was very scary times for sure. But I guess that's just all part of the journey of growth and learning. And, you know, we're in a stronger position now than we were before. I feel more well-equipped as an athlete, and we definitely have better connections over in the Middle East than we ever have done before as well. So, you know, although it was a pretty shit time, to be honest, and, you know, grateful for those hard times to put us where we are now.
I think Brian has a question regarding maybe just the level of competition in Asia, particularly. Maybe get your point of view from either Ed or Ant. Brian,
For sure.
Do I, Patrick? I don't know. No, I was one of the things that I was wondering about is over the, you know, the course of this time that you guys have been training, have there been any kind of like natural groups of competitive athletes that have developed that you train alongside of? You know, we regularly see this in other parts of the world, and you know, then out of a group of maybe like there's one guy that's kind of made it, and then there's maybe like 5 or 6 buddies, and then all of a sudden a few years later, one of those guys emerges as being good enough.
Yeah, I mean, I will just start by saying that's 100% something that we want to start to create here.
Mm-hmm.
And we're starting to do that now. We kind of have this little group that train with Ant in his afternoon sessions, and also, you know, in his morning sessions as well. So Adele, you know, who's Ant's partner, you know, she won the Asia CrossFit Championship. She's a great example of someone who's been doing CrossFit for a long time, was doing a lot of the online programs and not really progressing. And then, you know, the power of being in an environment where there's now 5 or 6 of them of all different ability levels. I mean, to be honest, Ant is still, you know, head and shoulders above the rest of them, but you can see what that is breeding now. You know, people, that group is getting really, really good. The tough thing about Hong Kong is that it's a really expensive country to be in. You know, so when I look at CrossFit Mayhem, and, you know, I look at something that's so awesome that they can have this, you know, huge gym, huge facility, cost of living is a little bit lower, so people can relocate there quite easily. And a lot of people are relocating within the US, and that's, you know, quite a lot easier. For us, it's a brand new country. You've got to get a visa to come in here. Cost of living is really expensive. It also means you're going to be living in a shoebox rather than a house, which isn't that attractive for a lot of people. So yeah, it's definitely tough, but that's why we run these athlete camps. We want to get people into the gym to experience what it could be like, you know, if you trained here every day. And we definitely have a few athletes now, you know, a few semi-final level athletes who competed last year, who are on the program, who are now regularly coming down from China, you know, and joining for some training sessions. joining the athlete camp and who are thinking about, spending something like the quarterfinals, coming down, relocating for a couple of weeks, doing the quarterfinals here, and maybe doing their prep for the semifinals here. So 100%, that's something that we would really, really like to do. And I know that would have a really significant impact on, developing the level of athlete over here. Yeah, the power of environment. Because I think right now, all these athletes are just kind of like by themselves in their own gyms. They have no coaches to put a coach's eye on them. They've got no fellow athletes who want the same thing as them. That's the biggest difference, right? It's not just about being a talented athlete. It's like having that same driving force, that same like North Star of what you want to achieve. And then, I think that's the influence that Ant has on a lot of people, as people see how dedicated he is, not just to the training, but to everything outside of the gym. And I think that's having a really big, a ripple effect on the people that he trains with. And that's cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, that more or less that happened in Russia with the Kalashnikov team over a course of maybe a 2-year time period. All of the best CrossFit athletes kind of migrated towards that gym. And you had suddenly you started having not just teams, but also individuals from Russia that were doing very well in Asia. And then things have kind of changed for Russia in the past couple seasons, and those kind of had to disperse for different reasons. But something like that certainly, can happen in those types of countries, just like it does in certain cities in North America.
Yeah, for sure. That's something we really want. I mean, one of the biggest things we're working on right now is, we've just launched an individual coaching course with the goal of, developing coaches. And right now that course is only created in English, but we 100% want to be translating that course in Chinese, which is going to hopefully happen in 2024, mid-year, and then Korean, Japanese. And the whole idea there is, well, if we can start to, influence coaches, who are working with athletes around Asia, that's how we're going to have the biggest ripple effect, right? And then those coaches start serving the athletes and the people that they're coaching. And I think that's how we're going to elevate not just the competitive CrossFitter, but just the fitness athlete in general, or the fitness person. So yeah, this is kind of like our next big priority. Certainly something that I'm focusing on more is like, how can we just raise the level of coaching in Asia? And then, know if we can influence the coaches, then, what kind of impact can that have on the whole continent?
Well, Patrick, you got anything else, different topic that we haven't touched on yet?
No, I mean, not really. I think you guys hit it all. I mean, we could talk about your golf game.
Let's not talk about that. Nah. End the episode now.
These two guys, not only before they competed in Dubai, or before Ant did, they decided to hit the links in Dubai. But why not? Hey, win in Dubai, right?
Exactly.
So,
I mean, this is really great that we were able to make this work. Obviously, the time change is quite dramatic. It's Friday morning over there. It's getting late here in the U.S., but this is something that we're trying to do. We're trying to get to know people in different parts of the world, and especially people who have been integral in the development of the fitness, health, CrossFit communities there. I am actually interested in potentially getting out that way at some point. So maybe we can talk about that and what that could look like. But I think
I still got my visa. It's good for, it's good for another, I think, 6 years. So
yeah, we'll get you out here for sure.
Yeah, I definitely want to do it.
I just wanted to say that, I think what you guys are doing is super awesome. I mean, Brian, I've been following you for a really long time, and I love the work that you're putting out for, on the analytics side. It's something I'm super interested in. So I'm always listening to your stuff. And obviously, Paddy, meeting you back in the day and then seeing you again in Dubai was super cool. So it was a real honor, certainly for me, to be on the show. So thank you for thinking about us. And it was great to meet you guys and see you guys again in Dubai recently. And, would love to have you guys out here. Would love to accommodate you at Coastal Fitness, and then maybe tie in a trip to China together. That would be really cool.
That would be awesome. Yeah. And both you guys are going on a little holiday here, and I imagine what's next for you is just the game season, correct?
Yeah, we actually get back from our holiday and we go straight to the Philippines, where we're going to visit 2 of our affiliates over there. And then we're also programming for a competition in Cebu, which is a small island in the Philippines. So we'll go to Cebu to help run that competition with one of our affiliates. And then we'll be back in Hong Kong that next weekend. We're running a Hong Kong athlete camp where we've got 40 athletes signed up. So a full weekend of working there. And then, yes, it will be open prep after that.
And Ed, obviously everything he just said, but again, you have a podcast, correct?
Yeah. The Process podcast. We release an episode every single week. So, the goal is to still make that bigger and better every year. I said it to you guys before. I think, in fact, I've even messaged Brian. I'm not sure if he's seen Zone Me. I think he responded to me.
Put it on the air right now, on record.
Love to have you guys on the podcast. But yeah, as Ant said, it's always the January-March period is always a super busy time for us. And I guess for me, I'm going to do the Open again for sure. I want to do the Masters quarterfinals. I think this will be my 10th or 11th year doing it. Brian will probably correct me if I get that stat wrong. But I'm super excited about it. I love this time of year. And then, fully intend to be back at semi-finals, hopefully not just with Ant, but with other athletes representing the Process. And, the goal 100% is to be at the CrossFit Games every single year. So keep the momentum rolling from last year, and hopefully we'll see you guys then, if not before.
Where can people listen to your podcast? What platforms? Or
Hey, he had Andre Houdet on recently. I bet that was a good episode.
I know.
It was a really good episode, actually, just hearing about the transition out of athlete Andre to coaching Andre.
Yeah. He invited me to dinner in Italy. We went out, him and his a media guy, the 3 of us, for a couple hours. He's a great person to talk to. So I might have to check that one out.
Yeah, give it a listen. It's a good one. You can find the podcast on all platforms. Thanks for asking, Patrick. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. We release snippets on our YouTube channel as well, and it's just called the Process Podcast.
Yeah. If you can't get a hold of Brian, just reach me. We'll get Brian on your podcast. Just we'll have to set up a time. If he doesn't answer, just come to me. I'll make sure he gets it. But
I appreciate that.
Yeah, but yeah, like Brian said, it's a pleasure having you guys on. Obviously, I'm a big fan of yours, not just as athletes, but as people and ambassadors to the sport. Obviously, being half Chinese, it has a you're part of the world. It interests me a lot. And unlike Brian's introduction, where he gave you this big old hype, my introduction was just going to be ni hao. That's all I was going to say.
Nice. Ni hao back to you, Paddy.
Exactly. It's comforting to know that I know the same amount of Chinese that you guys know. Hello, thank you, give me food, give me money. Yeah, that's about. I can count to 5, I think. But we really appreciate. Yeah, we really appreciate you guys coming on. And if you ever need anything, reach out. And we hopefully we'll cross paths soon. Brian, you have anything else you want to close or?
No, it was great to learn about all the things that you know about that we don't from over there. And I hope that anyone who happens upon this podcast takes away something valuable, or maybe even will reach out to you guys. I think that especially just knowing the background of coaching, mentors that Ed has had and then implemented into the things that he's organized and is running over there. Don't take that lightly when he says that he was coached by James Fitzgerald and then spent 7 years being coached by the guys at Training Think Tank. And just listen to what he says about how he values analytics. He gives away this programming for free for 3 years because he wants the information. All of those things are signs of a guy who is pretty dialed into what is going to make something successful for you over the period of time that you want it to be.
I really appreciate that, Brian. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great rest of your day. All right.
Yeah. Have a good night's sleep.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Take care.
I'm glad we had them on.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for setting that up. I know that the logistics were tough with the time change and everything, but wealth of information. And like I said, just there, not just about that part of the world, but fitness in general. Those guys are pretty dialed in. I mean, listen to what Ant said. 10 years, he's finally taken a vacation. He's been afraid to not eat and weigh and measure his food and have the discipline for all that time, and now he's just now he's going to have a little bit of a reprieve. And you think about what this year meant for him and what it could potentially mean for CrossFit and fitness in China in general because of what he achieved. And that wasn't something that happened overnight. That was him laying the bricks for a long time.
Yeah, I it was kind of good. Well, not good. It was to get their perspective on the changes in CrossFit just recently and how it's affecting them. I mean, I don't know if CrossFit knows that. I mean, I know Liang, he's a really knowledgeable guy. I don't know how much communication he has. I know at one point around 2018, 2019, when Greg was around, that was an agenda of theirs, was to spread CrossFit in China. They saw the biggest amount of growth, and I haven't heard much about it since. So,
yeah, it would be curious to know if and what conversations are happening between Liang and Max about what is best for those the people there, because ultimately they probably just want to see their country be healthy humans, live healthy lives for the most part, and they know that there's a methodology out there that's designed to do that they both believe in. How do they navigate the new changes and make that as practical as possible for the biggest amount of people as possible over there? Man, you're dying, huh?
I guess I am. Something in my throat now. But no, that was great. It's been a busy week for us. Sorry, I'm doing a lot more talking than I'm used to. But yeah, we're not. Our week's not over. We brought it up when we had Fikowski on earlier. Please, if you get a chance, watch that show, and then tomorrow we'll be back. We'll be back around noon Central, 1:00 Brian's time. We'll have Easy Muhammad on. We're looking forward to that. We're going to do kind of a Legends recap. We're trying to catch up on a lot of things that we missed when we're in Dubai and our travels. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, that should be good. Easy was out there competing. Obviously, there were a lot of athletes out there, and wasn't something that was able to be watched. So just going to try to learn as much as we can from him on the athlete side. We did reach out to competition organizers and to see. So chance that they'll come on, but maybe not. At least we'll get to talk to Easy about it and kind of wrap up the week, I guess.
Yeah. And then we have some cool stuff scheduled for next week. We're releasing the Madison era and plan on having John Young on for that as well.
Yeah, it'll be the Madison era rankings. This was the last year of the CrossFit Games in Madison, so we'll top 30, I think we'll do from the years of 2017 through 2023 for the men, and then the next week for the women.
But yeah, so a lot of cool stuff, a lot of busy stuff. So that's all we have. Thank you, and be friendly, our friends.